S'more Murder. Book 1 of the Camping Girl Cozy Mystery Series. Written by Josephine Bintema. Narrated by Josephine Bintema.
Chapter 15. Bail Money. We were all dressed in comfortable black clothing with sneakers on. Leaving the all-too-visible Mercury on the side of the road near some trees, B led the way along the back of the golf course, where the dark shadowed us from any detection. Crouching in some bushes at the back of the rental shop, we looked at the building. "Remember, the security guard has already checked the building," reminded Thelma. "We need to get inside and look around. B is going to keep watch for us. If anything comes, she will give the signal and we can hightail it out of there into the trees. Once you reach the road, turn right and you'll find the Mercury. We'll all meet at the car should anything go wrong." "Which it won't," B assured us. "You've got until dawn. At that point, the security guy comes back to check that the building is locked. If you're out of there before then, no one will be the wiser." "What's the signal?" I asked, nervous energy pumping through my veins. "A bird," B shrugged. "It'll be a bird. Now get going." With B stationed in the bushes on the lookout for anyone coming near the rental building, Thelma and I jogged toward the front of the rental shop. Thelma pulled a set of small tools out of her purse. "Thelma, those are break-in tools," I hissed. "I thought you said you had a key." "I do," she responded. With a flick of her wrist, we heard a small click as the mechanism fell into place. Thelma opened the door. "Metaphorically, with a key, a person could at least argue it was not actually a break-and-enter," I muttered. At least that was what I was telling myself. "Honey, it's a break-and-enter." Thelma clicked on her small pen light, leading around the counter to the back of the rental shop. "You start at the front, I'll take the back, and we'll meet in the middle." I quickly closed the outside door, locking it again. I flicked on my own small flashlight and followed Thelma to the back of the building where all the equipment was held. It was lined up in neat rows, organized with top-of-the-line golf clubs neatly in golf bags. Thelma was already near the back, inspecting clubs, looking for any telltale signs of dried blood. Taking a deep breath, I started with a set of clubs near me, trying to be quick and thorough in my inspection. The likelihood of finding the club that killed Ethel was slim. Many golfers had their own private set of clubs at home. Perhaps the killer had cleaned the club, and our theory would have never been known. If Loretta hadn't said she saw the killer with a golf club, and Conrad agreed it would be a good match for the murder weapon, we wouldn't even be here on Alfred's property trying to find the missing murder weapon. There were a lot of clubs and little time. This had to be done before the morning opening of the shop. Perhaps an hour passed, and my shoulders began to ache from the repetitive motions. Doubling my efforts, I ignored the screeching of a nearby barn owl. I was inspecting a 5-iron when a flashlight beam clicked on, aiming for my face. Blinded, I put up a hand to try to see. "Well, what is going on here?" asked Detective Armand in his dry voice. I dropped the 5-iron into the bag it had come from and tried to think quickly. "Can I help you?" "You can tell me why you're trespassing on private property at 3 a.m, responded Armand. He didn't move the flashlight beam as he stepped toward me. "There was a party at the clubhouse," I shrugged, trying for nonchalance and failing miserably. "I was invited. I'm not trespassing." "Somehow I don't believe your invitation extends to the rental shop," dryly commented Armand. "Davison, explore the shop and make certain Miss Thurman was alone." "Yes, sir," sighed Davison. He gave me a censorious look before poking around the shop. I hoped Thelma was well hidden or had managed to get away. Grabbing my elbow, Armand chugged me along. "Don't make me have to put cuffs on you." I decided the best thing I could do under the circumstances was to be quiet and cooperative. Likely I would be charged with trespassing plus breaking and entering. I had never done a crime before, and was it a crime when all you were trying to do was clear your own name in a murder investigation? Armand opened the door of his car for me, and I slid into the back seat. The unmarked cop car wasn't particularly spacious, and I felt a little cramped around the legs. Thankfully, I was short, otherwise it might be claustrophobic. Armand left me in the car while we went back into the building. Without much hope, I tried the door. It wouldn't budge. Not that I would run, as that would be stupid. Armand would find me anyways. Looking out the window, I could see someone turn on the lights inside the rental shop. I hoped Thelma had gotten away. A sudden sharp rap on the other door of the car had me looking over to find a crouching bee beside the car. She waved at me with some alarm. I slid in the seat to get closer to the window. Looking at the building, Bee grabbed a pen and a piece of paper out of her purse. She frantically wrote on it and plastered the paper to the glass so I could read her writing. "Thelma is okay. I must go before the cops see me." I nodded, and Bee quickly scribbled down one more thing. "We'll raise money for bail. Don't worry." I nodded again, and Bee quickly retreated through the darkness. The door to the driver's seat opened, and Armand took a seat. Fishing out a cigarette, he abruptly crushed it, putting it into a portable ashtray. With a frustrated sigh, his eyes met mine in the rearview mirror. "Why on earth would you be in White Oak's rental shop?" "Maybe I wanted to rent some clubs," I ventured. Armand turned around as best as he was able to in the cramped space, an arm hanging over the back of his seat. "Ivy, I'm going to level with you. This isn't good. I've looked you up. Until now, you've never caused any trouble. However, you're a suspect in 2 murders, and now you've been caught snooping through the White Oaks Resort and Golf Course rental place. I'm trying to get a warrant to search the rental and pro shops because I think the murder weapon might be here. Now, because of your presence here tonight, I have to search the building to see what you were looking for. Ivy, I'm worried I am going to find the murder weapon tonight, and you were the last person in the building." "What are you trying to say?" I managed to speak past the lump in my throat. "I'm saying if the murder weapon is in the building, and if it is a golf club, like I suspect, things aren't good." Armand ran a hand over his face, his shoulders slumped. "I don't think you did it, but the evidence. Any decent prosecutor will think you planted it there. It's all we need to arrest you for murder." "I didn't do it. I didn't kill anyone," I squeaked in alarm. "Sure, I broke into the shop, but all I wanted to do was try to find the golf club which was used to kill Ethel. Loretta told us it was a golf club, and Conrad agreed it could be an iron. Conrad used to be a coroner. We thought if we found the club, we could find out who had rented the particular golf bag the day Ethel died. We would find out the identity of the murderer this way. That's all we were doing. I never killed anyone. I had no idea about Ethel leaving me any money, and I hadn't seen Grandma in years, but I loved her. She was my favorite person in the whole world. I would never harm her." Armand just looked at me sadly. "You had better pray we don't find the golf club, Ivy." I felt a tear make its way down my cheek. I was terrified. Could the police lock me up for a murder I hadn't committed? I promise you, I haven't killed anyone." "It doesn't look good," he repeated. With a heavy sigh, Armand maneuvered around and exited the car. The detective went into the shop, joining the other officers as they searched for the club which had killed Ethel Merle. I sat in silence, worry gnawing at me. I had the feeling Thelma and Bee wouldn't find enough money to bail me out if I was charged with murder. I didn't even have any money to hire a decent lawyer, and I couldn't touch Ethel's money for legal expenses. The bequest was only for the campground. Closing my eyes, I thought over all our suspects and notions of catching the killer. What a dumb idea it had been. How could some amateurs manage to find out who had killed Ethel? Instead of finding the murderer, I was now in a huge mess. The only thing I could hope was that the police didn't find the club in the shop. I wondered why Armand had been somewhat nice to me. If I were more cynical, I would say he was playing good cop to his own earlier bad cop. Yet I had seen sympathy in his eyes when he had explained what could happen if the officers found the weapon. Armand had appeared genuine when he told me he didn't believe I was the killer. Yet it seemed his hands were tied. Detective Armand had to follow procedures. A set of arguing voices interrupted my thoughts. I looked out the window of the detective's car to find Armand and Al Frick in a heated discussion. Al was waving his hands around, emphasizing his point, occasionally gesturing to the car where I sat. In contrast, Armand was quieter, more forceful, and looked as though he had been sucking on a particularly bad lemon. His answers were curt and unwavering. Whatever Al and Armand were arguing about, it appeared I was involved as Al looked my way again. He stepped closer to Armand, growling something. It was a shame I was too far away to hear whatever the turmoil was between the two men. I searched to see if there was a way to roll down the window so that I might be able to overhear some of the conversation. No luck. The controls had been removed. I sighed in frustration. Al abruptly jerked out his cell phone. Walking a short distance away, Al used his phone to call someone. Armand didn't appear too pleased by the prospect of whatever was going on. He motioned to a police officer who disappeared into the rental shop. A short while later, Davison emerged to talk with Armand. The two men conversed for a moment before Davison hurried inside. If anything, Armand's face became even more unhappy. Al marched back to the detective, handing him the phone triumphantly. Armand held it to his ear, barely saying anything during the short conversation. Abruptly, Armand gave the phone back to Al. Turning on his heel, he entered the rental shop, and soon the police were exiting, not looking at all pleased with the turn of events. Al put his phone away, folding his arms over his chest. He looked inordinately pleased with the situation. Armand was the last one out of the golf rental shop. He closed the door behind him. Without a glance at Al, he marched to the car and slid into the driver's seat. Taking out a cigarette, Armand pulled out a lighter and lit it, inhaling deeply. I waited for him to say something, anything, as to what had just occurred. The silence stretched out before Armand broke it. You're free to go. Excuse me? The words tumbled out of me in disbelief. Armand cleared his throat, putting out the cigarette and putting the remains in the portable ashtray. Frick claims he gave you permission to be in the golf shop. He dropped any charges against you. I have no probable cause to search the place, since no crime was committed. I breathed a sigh of relief. It appeared I wasn't going to jail after all. Don't be so pleased about this, Armand warned grimly. If I had managed to find out the murder weapon wasn't there, I might have been able to clear you. Our guess it could be a golf club is right, I mused. Where did you even think it might be a golf club? Armand grabbed a package of antacids out of his shirt pocket, popping one into his mouth. I told you, Loretta and Conrad, I shrugged. She saw it, and, in his professional opinion, a golf club matched the wound in Ethel's head. The detective heaved a tired sigh. Loretta Jonas thinks she saw Al Frick kill Ethel while she was sleepwalking. Her story is incredible. Frick had a solid alibi, and Loretta is a kooky old lady. Loretta is the only witness you have, I countered, and Conrad was a coroner at the local medical examiner's office. He knows what he's talking about. He's retired and needs to stop poking his nose in where it doesn't belong, Armand stated firmly. The police department has had numerous complaints about him. He was right about being a golf club, I insisted. Is there any way Al Frick would let you search the rental shop without a warrant? Stop it, Ivy. I'm the detective here, not you, Armand ground out. Frustration poured off him as he ran a hand through his hair, causing it to be mussed. This whole debacle might have an effect on my chances of getting a search warrant. Oh, I sat back, slumping a little. I'm sorry. I don't know why Frick vouched for you, but I would be careful of him, he advised. I don't think Al's dangerous, but I can see him wanting a favor in return some day. What happens now? I asked. Now you can go home, replied Armand, his voice heavy. Do you have a ride? I can walk, I responded, not wanting to cause him any more trouble than what I already had. No. Armand shook his head. Ivy, you need to be careful. Whoever wanted the Happy Camper Resort enough to murder 2 women isn't going to stop, especially after you told everyone you have no intention of selling. I'm going to put Davison on watch detail tonight. He'll be nearby your trailer to keep an eye on you. During the day, someone else from the department will switch in. I don't want you going anywhere without a member of the police force tailing you to make certain you're safe. You mean you're going to get the police to babysit me? I raised an eyebrow. If that's what it takes to keep you out of trouble, a grim Armand replied. Turning the key in the ignition, he started the car. You should wear your seatbelt, I told him as I quickly buckled my own. Does it have to be Davison? Could it be someone else that you get to watch me? Armand grumbled something before using one hand to buckle his own seatbelt, his other hand on the wheel as he drove. Why? Worried Davison might be too tired to take you out on another date? Why are you always so grouchy? I asked, annoyed at him. With a half laugh, Armand pulled out of the White Oaks Resort and Golf Club. Let me think. I have a woman who keeps tripping into trouble, and will probably get herself thrown in jail if she keeps it up. There are 3 murderers in a tiny town, and a retired coroner who doesn't know when to quit. I have to chase away an old man with a metal detector from my crime scene, which was already contaminated by a woman and her 2 dogs. Surprise! The woman and the metal detector man are part of a bunch of elderly people determined to play amateur sleuths despite the fact they have no training and no reason to interfere in my investigation. I have an ulcer. Oh, and someone is missing a purebred cat, and will add that to my list of things to do. Chasing cats isn't in the description of detectives' regular duties, but the owner is a friend of the chief of police, so the chief put it on my plate too. Now, in the middle of the night, here I am dragging this woman who keeps getting in the way of my investigation away from the scene of yet another crime which may just have shot my chance of a search warrant. Do you see where I might have a problem or two? Armand let out a growl. I need coffee. The ulcer is probably from the smoking, coffee, and stress, I mentioned quietly, a little put out at his description of me. I wasn't always tripping into trouble or getting in the way. He made me sound like an absolute nuisance. I wondered who the third murder victim was. However, he was a detective. Maybe it was a cold case or totally unrelated to Grandma and Ethel. Why do you think I'm here in this little town? Armand asked tersely. This is supposed to be less stressful than the city. Maybe what is stressing you isn't the place. Maybe it's your attitude, I sniffed. You could use some meditation or yoga. That is never going to happen, rejected Armand. Did you say there was a missing cat? My thoughts were distracted to that tidbit of information. You want to investigate a cat for me? Armand perked up a little as he drove into the Happy Camper Resort. I'll be happy to hand the case over to you. You're funny, I replied with a small amount of sarcasm. No, really, you'd be doing me a favor. If you want to play amateur sleuth, at least take a case I don't care about, encouraged Armand. Tawny Tilbury has lost her prize-winning purebred Persian cat, Winifred. It got out Saturday evening and hasn't been seen since. She's even offering a reward. How much? I questioned slowly, annoyed at the thought that since Armand had investigated me, he probably knew the story state of my finances. I needed some quick cash, and how hard could it be to find a cat? $1,000 in cash, he stated in satisfaction. It was easy to see that Armand hoped the reward might sway my commitment to finding the animal. It must be her cat, microchipped and verified. Tawny wants her Winifred back, not some stray. And you don't have time for an elderly woman's kitty? I replied dryly. I've got 3 murders and keep running into you, an irritated Armand told me. He pulled up to my trailer. What do you say? Are you ready to take on the case of the missing cat? I'll think about it. I folded my arms. I wasn't ready to give up on Ethel's case quite so quickly. I was close. I could feel it. Armand exited the vehicle, opening a back door, letting me out. Give me your phone. Excuse me, I frowned. Your phone. He waited expectantly, a hand out. I dug around in my purse, slapping it into his palm. Unlock it, growled Armand, his jaw tightening. He really was wound, I thought. Taking my phone back, I blinked up at him. Say please. Gritting his teeth, Armand glared at me. Deciding it probably wasn't wise to bait him any further, I put in the phone's code, sliding the screen to open. He took the phone and tapped at the screen before handing it back. Any suspicious activity, you call me. Any harebrained ideas, you call me. Any urges to go off investigating any murders, you call me. Davison will be nearby watching you and will report back directly to me every hour as to what you are up to. I looked at the screen and sure enough, L. Armand was now on my contact list. What's the L for? Luca. He opened his car door and slid his tall frame into the vehicle. I watched him drive away and looked around for Davison, but I didn't see anyone. I hit Armand's contact number and I listened to it ring. You're kidding me, came his voice over the phone. What? Is this a bad time to admit I might have found something at the dock? I asked with a small amount of trepidation. You know, the day the dogs and I broke the crime scene tape? Which wasn't my fault, by the way. Let me guess, came his heavy reply. You took whatever it was away from the crime scene, probably making it inadmissible as evidence in court. I winced, hearing the tired defeat in his voice. I could see his brake lights in the distance as Armand switched into reverse. Is that bad? What did you find? Armand sighed. A cufflink? I explained how Cookie had chased a chipmunk and Cupcake had found the piece of jewelry. Thelma had a jeweler's loupe and took a closer look. The image is of a lion and a falcon. At first we thought it was an eagle, but the markings are different. It's the Rickards family crest, which looks almost the same as the Fricks crest. I guess they've been copying them because Al and Cliff are half-brothers. Armand pulled up the car beside me, getting out. Half-brothers? Why haven't I heard about that? Apparently the relationship isn't talked about, I shrugged, ending the call as he walked over to me. I only know because Thelma told me. People don't mention it much, but the Rickards are jealous of the Fricks. Thelma told me that the Rickards are always trying to prove that they're just as important as the Fricks family, which is considered one of the founding families of Oaks Crossing. "Where is the cufflink?" asked Armand. "Right here in the trailer." I pulled my keys out of my purse. "I'll get it for you." Slipping my phone back into my purse, I unlocked the trailer. Before I could stop them, Cookie and Cupcake raced past me, barking and sniffing at Armand. He raised an eyebrow. "The two dogs from the dock?" "Meet Cupcake and Cookie." I stepped into the trailer, grabbing the leashes. The last thing I wanted was for the doggies to run after another chipmunk. Coming back outside, I found Armand crouched down, giving Cookie a rub behind the ears as Cupcake snuffled about. Cookie smiled a wide doggy grin and gazed at Armand with what could only be described as adoration. A little annoyed, I clipped both leashes on their halters and handed them to Armand. "They're cute." He scratched Cookie under the chin, and the dog flipped itself over, showing her belly in hopes of getting a scratch. I rolled my eyes and returned to the trailer. Fishing through my tin of tea bags, it took only a few moments to pull out the cufflink. Coming back outside, I held out the piece of jewelry. "Here it is." Leaving a disappointed Cookie, Armand stood up, brushing his hands off on his slacks before pulling out a small plastic bag. "You should wipe it off before putting it in the bag. This way it won't have your fingerprints on it." I looked at him in shock. "Tampering with evidence?" "It's already tampered with." The detective scowled. "No need to make things worse by having the evidence redirect itself to you if your fingerprints are on it." I wiped the cufflink with the fabric of my shirt, carefully holding it by the edge of my fingernails, dropped it into the clear bag. Armand zipped it up, pulled out a marker, and wrote something on it. "Anything else you'd like to tell me?" He waited, steadily watching me. "I don't think so." I shrugged, conveniently ignoring the threatening letter, and what I had overheard Blake say on the phone. It was all my word against a cop. If I had hard evidence, that would be something different, but I didn't. The thought of Davison outside my trailer at night was scary now that I knew that Blake was working with Biff. "You're absolutely certain?" Armand pressed, not believing me. "There isn't anything else that I should know." "Are you certain it has to be Davison? Can't it be someone else?" I mumbled. "This is a small town." Armand studied me. "There are a limited number of cops. Davison is already familiar with you." "I understand that." I trailed off, trying to think of something I could say which might change Armand's mind. "Did he say or do something to make you uncomfortable?" Armand folded his arms across his chest, face scowling. "He may have said something upsetting to me," I shrugged. "I would prefer someone else, if that's okay." Armand tugged the radio off his belt and spoke into it. "Davison, report back to the station. I need you to settle some details on a report. Warren, you're here on babysitting duty at the Happy Camper campground." Babysitting duty? I bit my tongue so I wouldn't give a snide reply. Armand didn't know it, but I was going to sleep a lot better tonight, knowing that the guy who was trying to steal my property wasn't keeping watch outside my door. "Thank you." "Anything else?" questioned Armand. "I'll let you know if I think of something," I told him coolly, still smarting over the babysitting remark. Giving me a last look of uncertainty, Armand pocketed the cufflink. With a final pet to Cookie and Cupcake, he got in his car. I called the doggies back to my camper as he drove away. "Traitor," I grumbled reproachfully to Cookie. The little bossy turned her back to me, plopping down on a pillow on the bed with a huff.